to call the meeting to order. Welcome. I'd like to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, Tsleil-Waututh Nation, and Musqueam Nation. We recognize and respect them as nations in this territory, as well as their historic connection to the lands and waters around us since time immemorial.
Madam Mayor, before we proceed, I'll just do a quick overview here of our safety procedures due to construction at Municipal Hall. As most people in here are aware, the north entrance to the building is closed for construction. In the event that we do need to evacuate, we ask that you please use one of the following routes. Out the main doors and head west onto 17th Street, or down the stairs next to the elevator and through the atrium and out by the police department. And lastly, there's an exit sign right above where CAO Lima sits, and you can just follow that right out to the parking lot. And as always, we ask that people keep the aisles and doorways clear and accessible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. I would like to take a moment to recognize the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign, and we're all wearing our orange ribbons to acknowledge this. It starts on November 25th next week and ends on December 10th with International Human Rights Day. The goal of this United Nations-led action is to increase awareness about and advocate for the elimination of all forms of gender-based violence. The United campaign uses the color orange as a uniting theme symbolizing a brighter future, and a theme for this year, and the theme this year is Orange the World. Okay, thank you for that. I also, before we begin with the agenda, I would like to make a few brief comments specifically to Councillor Wong regarding my reaction to him on his vote on the Hewitt House at our November 4th meeting. He spoke sincerely that night about the challenge we all face in making some very difficult decisions, and it was clear that he had given the matter considerable thought. He hoped that in changing his vote, it would not be seen as disrespectful to his colleagues and that it would not be taken personally. And I have reflected on my comments directed to you, Councillor Wong, that evening, and I wish to apologize. While I was disappointed that the vote failed, I shouldn't have spoken to you the way I did, and I'm very sorry.
Thank you for your kind words.
All right, so we'll move on to the first item. Councillor Sofrovich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move that the November 18, 2019 regular council meeting agenda be amended by adding to item 3 the minutes of the October 28 and November 4th, 2019 special open session and regular council meeting. Adding to item 4 information regarding the North Shore Pickleball Club regarding thank you, overview of the sport and indoor play options. By adding item 4.1 regarding the cancellation and scheduling of the public hearing regarding Area 5 and 6 of Rogers Creek, proposed zoning bylaw number 4662 2010, amendment bylaw number 5044 2019, official community plan number 4985 2018, amendment bylaw number 5045 2019, and phased development agreement authorization bylaw number 4041 2019. By adding item 5, a memorandum and the written submission C1 regarding proposed development variance permit number 19-032 for 1445 Queens Avenue, and finally adding item 9.1 regarding proposed archives donation agreement and proposed District of West Vancouver Archives Reserve Bylaw Fund number 5050 2019, and that the agenda be approved as amended.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And the adoption of the council meeting minutes.
Madam Mayor, just before council proceeds with adoption of the minutes, 2 quick things to note.
Sure.
The first of all, for the benefit of those in attendance, unfortunately, staff are encountering some difficulties with the live video streaming at the moment. So I just wanted to announce that publicly. I know our IT staff are working to resolve the issue, and we hope to have that back online as soon as possible. With regard to the minutes specifically, it's come to my attention that with regard to the November 4th, 2019 minutes on the first page, staff have recorded that Mayor Booth announced the West Vancouver United Church 100-year anniversary celebration on Sunday, November 17th, 2019. To my understanding, Mayor Booth had actually initially indicated that it was November 10th and then was corrected later in the meeting. So staff have gone with the corrected date in the minutes. But I just wanted to raise that because this particular thing does not exactly reflect what was said at the meeting. So if council is comfortable adopting the minutes as is, then you can, or you can direct staff to change that back to November 10th if you so desire. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll recommend that the following minutes be adopted as circulated, October 28th, November 4th as written.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So I'd like to remind the public that if you wish to speak to an agenda item for 3 minutes maximum, please sign the speakers list, which is up in the back corner there. Speak clearly into the microphone so that everyone can hear comments, including those who depend on assisted listening devices, and provide your name and whether you're a West Vancouver resident if you wish to do so. So the next item is the delegation from the North Shore Pickleball Club. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Heather Fleming. I'm the president of the North Shore Pickleball Club. And
I'm Ann Watson, and I'm the secretary of the club.
so, pickleball. It is a sport, and it is fun. And it is inexpensive. Here's a $10 racket and a $3 ball, and that's as easy as it is to play it. If you played any racket sport at all, and you can walk, you can basically learn the sport in about 5 minutes. So get out there and try it out. Inexpensive because this is $10. The ball is $4, and shoes are just some court shoes, tennis shoes or court shoes. Fast. It's fast. A game of pickleball takes 8 to 10 minutes, depending on who you're playing, and it is very social. After that 8 to 10 minutes, you mix around, and you can be playing with 24 to 30 people, and you get, at the end of the day, after the end of the hour and a half or 2 hour session, you'll get to know 24, 30 people because you play with all of them. It is intergenerational. We have families playing pickleball with 5, 6, 7-year-olds. We have a schools program that we worked with grade 9s and 10s and younger. We also have 91-year-olds playing pickleball. Generally, in our group, we have 72% of the people are over the age of 60. So most of us have gray hair. And it is both level play and all play, which means level play is if you want to play somebody at your same level, and that can go from about 2 up to 5, or all play is you just play whoever, and you adjust your game based on that. In terms of who we are, the North Shore Pickleball Club, we were formed in 2017. We actually involve the West Vancouver, you guys, the city, and North Vancouver. So we're on the North Shore. We have 483 members and more. We have 60% of our membership are women and 40% are men. 72 are 60 plus. We're members of both the Pickleball BC and Pickleball Canada organization, and our mission is to promote and advance pickleball as an exciting game for all ages and abilities. How do we achieve our mission? We host outdoor courts, and this summer we've had 8,380 participants playing pickleball. We provide free learn-to-play pickleball. We had 3 sessions this summer, and we had more than 70 people participating. We coach and go out to schools and get them excited about pickleball, both elementary and high school. And we also host pub nights for our social group, for our members and participants, and just to encourage that mingling. And we also advocate on behalf of the pickleball community. Over to you, Ann.
So here in West Vancouver, council and the Parks Department have been absolutely fabulous. Both of our recreation buildings, our community centers have done a tremendous job of hosting pickleball. And probably the best of the best was when you provided us with outdoor courts last year with permanent nets. First on the North Shore, one of the first in the Lower Mainland. Permanent nets. You took one tennis court and made it into 3 pickleball courts. And so in one tennis court, we can have 12 players playing at one time, and then we will rotate that every 10 minutes or so that we can easily play 22 to 24 people on 3 courts on a regular basis in a regular rotation. It's a very, very good use of facilities. And I think that if you've been driving by the one at 29th Street in the last while, you will see, over the last year, because the courts went in September, late September last year. And over that period of time of the last year, we have had thousands of people playing on an ad hoc basis. In addition, this summer alone, for the 4 months of the summer, the club recorded 1,180, I believe it is, 1,180 players. That's the number that were recorded. Okay, so it really does bring people together, and we meet our neighbors. I mean, how good is that? We love it. We also, as I was saying, have the indoor times at West Van Community Center, where we have 2 times every week. Even on a Saturday night, we come out and play pickleball. We might go to the pub afterwards, but we play pickleball first. And at Glen Eagles, they've done an amazing job. We have 5 times per week, and all levels is jam-packed. Right now, I am missing my opportunity to register for tomorrow, which means that by the time I get home, I might not get a spot because it's that popular. So, you know, the community here has really gotten behind the sport. However, it is growing really fast, and there's trouble getting in to actually play more. So our big hopes and dreams are that you will continue to support us in the future, and as more times come available, either because you develop more facilities or because there's a realignment of where courts are being used, we share with everyone that uses a gym. So you don't have to build specific facilities for this sport indoors. It would be nice, but we work on those same courts. Outdoors, I think we've shown that we can really fill them up and get a lot of people through and have the community involved. Pickleball players love mornings, but we'd also love to have some times where we can have families playing, you know, evenings, weekends. And again, out at Glen Eagles, Lee out there finds pop-up times for us on long weekends. So we get a 3-hour block and put it out 3 days beforehand and play pickleball. Okay. One other thing we would really love to have is signage for club play. And club play is I know that normally speaking the district doesn't like to show any kind of exclusivity, but actually the signage we would want would say that there's hosted play in the mornings and that we invite everyone to be there, and that you don't have to have a partner. So, you know, that would be fabulous for the community. It would help to get more people involved when we're doing regular play out at 29th. And then we might need another tennis court because it gets pretty full. Okay, so if any of you, as I mentioned in the cover letter, would like a little introduction to pickleball, we would love to have you, staff and council. We would love to have you join us. And Heather's a pro. She can, but she's very good. Show you how the game's played and bring your family.
Yeah.
You know,
Love to have you out.
I mean, Nora's been out, Norris played, yeah. And Marianne came and saw the game. We tried to get her, she said something to the effect of, I don't have the right shoes on, which was true. Which was very true, but we did try and get you out. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or? Counselor Wong?
Your Worship, thank you for your presentation. It's great to see new sports organizations take hold in the community. I'm curious, obviously you're trying to grow the sport. Have you thought of perhaps reaching out to new Canadians, people who are new to the community who may not speak English as a first language? I think it's a great opportunity to build bridges through, play and sport and togetherness.
Thank you.
Yep, sorry.
We just have lots of, it's multicultural out there. We have churches involved, we have guides, we have every person you can imagine playing pickleball. It's open to all.
Yeah. But as far as reaching out goes, we have not specifically done that. Our club is only 2.5 years old. So we're certainly, that's a great suggestion, and with time, yes, that would be great. But we do have people whose first language is not English. It doesn't matter.
So simple.
All you have to do is be able to count. That's it.
Great, that's fantastic. I challenge my members on council to a game. The
Get
winner
out
will
there.
buy the first round. How about that?
For sure.
Councillor Gambioli is apparently perking up
Yeah.
suddenly.
Let me tell you, he
How
may
do you
not
know
be
he's
fast,
not
but
playing
he's
in his
accurate.
spare time? You don't know that.
And I
world
assure
champion.
you,
He's a world champion.
if I win, it won't leave you in a pickle.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lambert.
Thank you. A recommendation that the delegation from the North Shore Pickleball Club regarding thank you, overview of the sport, and indoor play options be received for information with thanks and enthusiasm.
Yes,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you on the court.
Sounds good.
All righty. Item number 4.1. Oh,
On
yes,
receiving.
sorry. Thank
Councillor.
you.
Yes.
All in favor? Did we have a seconder on that? Okay, thanks. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may, just a few brief remarks. With regard to the next item, I'll scroll there first. First of all, the video stream is working. IT staff reported about halfway through the delegation we're back up and running, so that's good news to all those people watching us from home. With regard to the public hearing and public meeting scheduled for November 19th, 2019, staff are requesting that council cancel the scheduled public hearing and concurrent public meeting regarding Rogers Creek Areas 5 and 6. The cancellation of the public hearing and concurrent public meeting is required as one of the statutory notification requirements, specifically the publication of notices in the local newspaper, was not met due to an administrative oversight. The public hearing and concurrent public meeting therefore cannot proceed as scheduled, and I did want to take this opportunity to apologize on behalf of the district for the inconvenience caused to members of the public who are planning on attending tomorrow's proceedings. Given that tomorrow's public hearing and concurrent public meeting cannot proceed, staff instead recommend that the scheduled public hearing and public meeting be canceled and rescheduled to December 3rd, 2019 at 6 p.m. And the rationale for that is that a public hearing regarding Thunderbird Marina is already scheduled for the same evening, so council could have 2 public hearings in the same night to deal with those separate subject matters. And staff have prepared recommended motions for council's consideration accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So can I get a motion?
Madam Mayor, I recommend the public hearing scheduled for November 19th, 2019 at 7 p.m. regarding proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5044, 2019, official community plan number 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5045, 2019, and phased development agreement authorization bylaw number 5041, 2019, brackets area 5 and 6 of Rogers Creek, be canceled. And, well, should I do it as one, Mr. Patterson?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All together?
Just parts 1 and 2 of this recommendation,
Okay.
please, Councillor.
And the public meeting regarding proposed development permit 19-061 scheduled for November 19, 2019 at 7 p.m. to be held concurrently with the public hearing scheduled for November 19, 2019 at 7 p.m. be canceled.
Okay, any comments on that? All right, all in favor? Opposed, carried, thank you.
Okay, I recommend that proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5044, 2019, official community plan bylaw number 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5045, 2019, and phase development agreement authorization bylaw number 5041, 2019, brackets areas 5 and 6 of Rogers Creek, brackets be presented at a public hearing on December 3rd, 2019, at 6 p.m. in the Municipal Hall Council Chamber, and its statutory notice be given of the scheduled public hearing.
Any discussion?
Just to note, Madam Mayor, that I won't be able to attend.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, all in favor? Opposed, carried.
Secondly, I recommend the proposed development permit number 19-061 be presented at a public meeting scheduled for December 3rd, 2019, at 6 p.m. in the Municipal Hall Council Chamber, to be held concurrently with the public hearing scheduled for December 3rd, 2018, at 6 p.m. in the Municipal Hall Council Chamber, and that notice be given of the scheduled public meeting.
All in favor?
Yep.
All in favor? Opposed, carried.
And then finally, I recommend a special council meeting be called December 3rd, 2019, in the Municipal Hall Council Chamber, to be held at 6 p.m. or immediately following the close of the public hearing and public meeting scheduled for 6 p.m. on December 3rd, 2019, whichever is later.
All in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. And I'd like to also offer my apologies to Mr. Kroll, who's here tonight, about the mistake. All right, so moving to item number 5 is proposed development variance permit 19032 for 1445 Queens Avenue.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to introduce Assistant Planner Ms. Erica Savokis to present on this, and then staff are available for questions.
Good evening, Council, members of the public. The item before you is proposed development variance permit for 1445 Queens Avenue. The subject site is zoned RS3 and is 2,948.8 square meters in area. The property currently contains a single-story house and abuts Queens Avenue to the south, Highway 1 to the north, and single-family lots to the east and west. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the subject lot into 2 lots of equal width. The proposed new lots comply with a minimum required area, but not the minimum required width. And in order to subdivide, a variance of 0.5 meters per lot is required. The proposal also increases the side yards to a minimum of 3 meters to the neighboring properties to the east and west. These proposed side yards will address privacy for neighbors and are consistent with the required minimum side yards for the existing lot. If approved, the resulting lots would be in keeping with and in fact larger than many of the surrounding properties. Further, the houses on each of the new lots will be consistent with surrounding properties, as the proposed new lots result in a permitted floor area of 518.6 meters, 6 square meters for Lot A, and 513.5 square meters for Lot B, as compared to one large house at 1,032.08 square meters. Staff have no concern with the proposed variance, as the variance is minor. The proposed lots are consistent with the surrounding context. The proposal for 2 houses versus 1 large house reduces overall building bulk and allows for tree replacement opportunities, and an increased side yard to the neighboring properties is proposed. A concern was raised at the October 28th council meeting regarding the potential negative impact to the existing streetscape along the north side of Queens Avenue if the proposed new parcels were developed with houses to the minimum front yard setback, which is 9.1 meters under zoning, given that the homes on the existing homes are currently set back further than that minimum requirement. In response, the applicant has revised the proposed subdivision plan to increase the front yard setback to 12 meters for each of the newly created lots. The proposed front yard setback allows for a compromise between the 9.1 meters required under zoning and the existing neighboring properties, which are approximately 15 meters from the front property line. Staff note that the adjacent sites on the north side of Queens could be redeveloped at any time with a minimum 9.1 meter front yard setback. As well, the majority of homes on the south side of this block of Queens Avenue are currently situated at or near the minimum front yard setback. Therefore, should the application be approved, the new homes enabled by subdivision would be in keeping with the prevailing lot pattern. If the application was not approved, the owner could choose to build a large home in compliance with a minimum front yard setback. Additionally, the topography of the site may allow for enhanced view opportunities for homes set further back from the street, and a greater setback may be voluntarily provided without requiring it through a covenant registered on title of the subject properties. Therefore, although staff do not recommend requiring increased front yard setback, staff have no concerns with the revised proposal. Should council decide to impose a requirement for an increased front yard setback, the DVP would be revised to secure a covenant against the proposed lots. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Soprovich.
Thank you. There is, would be a covenant on the side yards?
That's correct.
That is to the neighbors, but not to each house.
Through the mayor to Councillor Soprovich, there is a required minimum setback to each other, and an increased front yard setback required through a covenant to the neighboring properties.
Equal to the neighbors? The side yard setback equal to the two houses, the same to the neighbors?
It would be the minimum required under zoning to each other, and an increased setback to the properties to the east and west.
Okay. And your increase in the front yard is 39 feet instead of 32 or 30?
It would be 12 meters instead of 9.1 meters.
Yeah, just about 32, 39. Under the OCP, what could go on those two lots?
Through the mayor to Councillor Soprovich, the OCP has policies to support sensitive infill opportunities, which could include subdivision with smaller lots with smaller homes, as well as coach houses, the possibility for stratification of coach houses, and consideration of duplexes.
Yeah. So the area appears to be single-family neighborhood. In drawing up the OCP, did you ever consider the neighborhood character document that is not finished yet?
Madam Mayor, we didn't consider it because it wasn't started. And
Sorry, I
it's
can't
not
hear.
finished. Madam Mayor, we didn't consider it because it wasn't started and it isn't finished. So it wasn't completed at that time. And we, as applications come forward, we consider neighborhood character as an important part of any application.
Yeah. So there are a lot of options that could go on those two lots then, like 2 duplexes plus coach houses?
Madam Mayor, conceivably, there are a number of things that could be considered. In terms of what staff would support, I think we would look at the prevailing context and make recommendations based on that. We think that what's being proposed here, 2 smaller single-family lots as opposed to 1 large single-family lot is the most appropriate thing, hence our recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, then I'll get Counselor Thompson.
Madam Mayor, apologies. Just before proceeding, there's potentially a presentation by the applicant and a call for public input that are required.
Okay, do we have anyone signed up for?
No speakers.
No speakers,
Nope.
all right. Mr. Chapman, welcome.
Chapman, I'm here as the applicant, acting for the owner, and just here to answer questions. I think everything's been dealt very well by the planning department. I don't want to hold you up tonight.
Okay, Counselor Thompson. All right, yeah, I don't think we have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for coming. So we'll just do these they each have to be voted on separately.
Okay. So I'll recommend that the memorandum from the the manager of current planning and urban design dated November 8th, 2019 regarding proposed subdivision of 1445 Queens Avenue be received for information.
All in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you.
And I'll recommend that all written and oral submissions regarding proposed development variance permit 19-032 for 1445 Queens Avenue, up to and including the council meeting held on November 18th, 2019, be received for information.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed, carried.
And then, is this the revised?
Madam Mayor, I understand there's an alternate recommendation that Councillor Lambert was considering. If it's up to him or Councillor Thompson, if they want to bring that forward, I can put it up on the screen if they wish to do so.
Okay.
But it's entirely at council's discretion. My understanding from Director Bailey is that this is not staff's recommendation, but it's an alternate motion that council could make if they wish to do so.
It just has to do with the.
Do you know, I haven't had a chance to read it, so if Councillor Lambert would like to,
Yeah, Madam Mayor, for the sake of expediency, it might be best if Councillor Lambert put the motion on the floor and then spoke to it for
Okay.
council's benefit. Thank you.
Okay, so I move that staff be directed to modify the proposed development variance permit 19032 to require a minimum front yard of 12 meters on each of the new lots to be secured through a Section 219 covenant against the proposed lots, and 2, proposed development variance permit 19-032 for 1445 Queens Avenue, which would allow for the subject property to be subdivided into 2 lots with a variance to the minimum lot width for each of the proposed lots be approved as modified.
Okay, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just briefly, the difference between that and the recommended motion has to do with the recommended front yard setback, increasing it from the 9 meters to the 12 meters, or the 9.1 to 12. And that's essentially the difference. Yes. Yep.
Councillor Wong?
Just a question for Mr. Bailey. So just to confirm that the 12 meters would then be consistent with what the applicant has agreed to amend their application, is that right?
Madam Mayor, staff understand that the applicant is amenable to the
To the 12.
modification.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no further speakers. I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And item number 6, proposed traffic and parking bylaw number 4370, 2004, amendment bylaw number 5048, 2019.
Item?
Sure.
Did we leave off the last part, or was the two motions?
It was combined.
It was combined
Yeah.
to approve?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that. All right.
Your worship, the purpose of this agenda item is to recommend a bylaw amendment with respect to the definition of a truck in the proposed traffic and parking bylaw. The reason is to harmonize the definition of a heavy vehicle across the region, and together with other municipalities across Metro and TransLink, staff have been working together to ensure that a consistent approach to defining heavy vehicles is applied across the region to ensure regional consistency. And this is sort of a largely administrative matter. And I have in the gallery Vanessa Garrett, Manager of Roads and Transportation, as well as Sarah Almas, Manager of Bylaws and Licensing, in case you have any specific questions related to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Can I get a motion?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to move that the proposed bylaw be read a first, second, and third time.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item number 7, proposed bylaw notice enforcement bylaw number 4368, 2004, amendment bylaw number 5049, 2019, and North Shore bylaw notice dispute adjudication registry agreement. Ms. Ellis?
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. The purpose of the report in front of you is to propose for council consideration administration amendments to the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw number 4368, 2004, and to provide council with an opportunity to approve the new North Shore Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Registry Agreement. The district has been a member of the North Shore Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Registry since 2004. The proposed bylaw amendments are required in order to update the agreement as a result of recent changes to Program Administrator. The district has designated that certain bylaw offenses be enforced by means of a bylaw notice pursuant to the Local Government Bylaw Notice Enforcement Act. If this system is used, a dispute adjudication system is required. The Local Government Bylaw Notice Enforcement Act provides that 2 or more local governments, by agreement adopted by a bylaw of each local government that is party to it, may jointly offer this dispute adjudication mechanism. Since 2004, the district has partnered with various other local governments in this regard, and the dispute adjudication function has been administered by the City of North Vancouver. The City of North Vancouver withdrew from the partnership and no longer facilitates the dispute adjudication function. The District of North Vancouver now facilitates the service in partnership with the District of West Vancouver, Bowen Island Municipality, and the Village of Lions Bay. As a result of this change, a new North Shore Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Agreement is required. The proposed amendments will update the agreement attached to Schedule B to the bylaw and amend Section 8.2 of the bylaw to align it with the other registry member local governments. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councillor Soprovich.
Ms. Elmas, who's adjudicating? What are we disputing? Tickets and other things in a court in North Vancouver?
It's not in the court, it's in the adjudication registry. The
Okay.
adjudicators are set by the deputy, the deputy attorney general.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's tickets such as parking tickets, tickets under the animal control bylaw and other bylaw matters.
So North Vancouver District changed the playing field. Are we now, the other municipalities obligated to pay all the shot? All the costs?
We don't anticipate any additional costs related to this change.
Well, there's some reference in the report. I can't find it right now, but there is cost associated.
The district does pay for their portion of the adjudication, which we don't anticipate will change.
We don't which?
We don't anticipate that our portion of the costs for adjudication will change as a
Oh,
result,
okay.
as a result of this amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? So what's the city going to do now? Do you know?
A local government may do this on their own or in a partnership with other local governments, so my understanding is they will be doing this on their own.
Okay, all right. So we'll get a motion from Councillor Soprovich.
I got it. I'll move that the proposed bylaw notice enforcement bylaw number 4368, 2004, amendment bylaw number 5049, 2019 be read a first, second, and third time. And that the District of West Vancouver enter into, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute North Shore Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Registry Agreement to facilitate the change in administration of the registry as set out in the report titled Proposed Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw number 4368, 2004, Amendment Bylaw number 5049, 2019, and that the North Shore Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Registry Agreement.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Item number 8, Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Chief, welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councils, and attendees. First, thank you very much for the opportunity for us to present our Community Wildfire Protection Plan. This plan, if approved, will create the framework moving West Vancouver into a more wildfire-resilient community. This approval will also allow us to proceed with application for funding from the Union of British Columbia Municipalities. This evening, I'm joined with Bruce Blackwell from BA Blackwell and Associates, a well-known and respected consultant with an expertise in CWPPs, or Community Wildfire Protection Plans, and how to successfully implement them. The District of North Vancouver has retained the services of Blackwell and Associates for their original CWPP and has just recently submitted an update to their mayor and council. It should also be noted that though the CWPP is written by BA Blackwell, there is a large amount of input and support from all the divisions that are directly impacted and substantial support from the North Shore Emergency Management Team. We'll start the presentation with a short video comparing best practices of fire smart construction and landscaping versus standard construction. And then at the completion of the video, Mr. Blackwell will continue with his presentation and PowerPoint.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to show a video tonight that was developed by the Insurance Institute for Business Home Safety in the U.S. because it really demonstrates what we're trying to do in the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which is basically harden the community from what we call an ember shower. And if you've watched the videos in California and other parts of British Columbia, Alberta, Northwest Territories, the Yukon, communities have all experienced the same kind of fire storm. So this video looks at using different materials in structure, and it's a simulation of an ember shower. So you're going to see over the next 2 minutes basically this demonstration home, which is constructed of numerous types of materials, and what happens to those materials during an ember shower. If you follow some of the California fires, many of them didn't meet any fire smart code. Napa Valley is a good example. And what happens is once one home or two homes ignites, our structural firefighters are set up to deal with no more than that. And we get home-to-home contact. If you look at Fort McMurray in Alberta, it was home-to-home contact. So what you're seeing here is the landscaping, common landscaping that most people use, bark mulch, azaleas, rhododendrons. You'll see that this material alights once the ember shower. You can see the different building materials that are used. There's some cedar shakes on the roof. There's hardy board, which is one of the recommended pieces of material. We'll see this is what the simulated ember shower looks like. You can see that basically it's running array of 105 fans at 10 to 20 miles per hour. We use about 15 kilometers an hour here in all of our simulations. And that's typically what would happen in a community where we had a forest fire with significant crowning. We use about a 20-hectare fire as a threshold that would produce these kind of conditions. So it could threaten a neighborhood of anywhere from 10 to 30 homes quite easily. You can see that basically the garden material around the base of the home is on fire. You'll see that the aluminum gutter stays intact, but the vinyl melts. You'll also start to see that material that's accumulated on the roofing surface will catch on fire. The vulnerable roofing will burn. The Class A roofing, which is Duroid in this case, will not burn. And then you'll start to see different parts of the home catch on fire. It's very explicit and really demonstrates why we need to move to building in a different way in North America, particularly near forest communities. I'll highlight in my presentation that we're not only concerned about fire coming into our community, but we're concerned about a house fire starting and moving into the forest. So there's two things to be thinking about. We don't want these fires in structures to move into the forest or cause other homes to be ignited, because it just taxes the resources that we have available. So you can see that vulnerable siding is now burning, whereas the other form of siding, the hardy board, which is a composite of wood and cement, is not burning. And you're going to see shortly the fire go through a single pane window, and you're going to see the embers move through an attic that isn't properly screened, which are other vulnerabilities that many homes face. The Fire Smart guidelines were altered after the fires in Fort McMurray because so many of the homes were destroyed by that garden material burning within a meter and a half of each of the homes. So here's the embers blowing into an unscreened attic where the soffits, the screening is too big. So you can see the embers blow right in. And once they're inside the attic, the home is exceptionally vulnerable to fire. And here you're going to see it go through the window, I believe. And you can imagine if there was furniture, draperies, other vulnerable parts in this living space once the fire blew through the window like this. So everything I'm going to talk about in the CWPP is focused on preparation and preparing for these types of events by hardening off our building stock so that the building stock isn't vulnerable to this type of event. You've had 2 small fires in West Vancouver, Strip Creek Fire, White Lake Fire. Both of those didn't amount to a lot, but really taxed the emergency resources. They were small fires. Imagine several hundred hectares or even several thousand hectares on fire, West Van, North Van. It would be chaos, just with all the people that we have, the kinds of access that we have, the infrastructure that's affected, and the microscope that it would come under. So what we're trying to build in this plan is resiliency in staff, the community, and the fire department in protecting homes from these kind of events. So we started this project at the beginning of this year. This program was created by BC originally as the Strategic Wildfire Initiative Program, and West Van decided to do their own CWBP after last summer, 2018's fires, with the goal of trying to reduce the risk of the property. So basically, we're looking at trying to impact the consequence of fires. We look at fuel reduction as one part of it. We look at applying for available funding to support programs in the district, educating homeowners to better protect their homes. And we look at how are we going to implement this across the district in all kinds of different ways. So we put a plan together with a number of recommendations, a number of priorities, and we rate those priorities in terms of moving forward. We look at the community as a whole, and we look at what the vulnerable fuel types and fire behavior and fire threat are. And this is a map of fire threat, which basically you can see largely we've got a few, most of the area is moderate, and this is under extreme climate. We do a climate modeling exercise looking at 90%, the 90th percentile of historic climate. That's not looking at future climate, that's looking at the worst of the climate that we've had in the last roughly 30 to 50 years, and what kind of fire behavior we could expect. So this isn't incrementing for climate change or any of those kinds of things, but you can see that we have pockets of high and pockets of moderate fire behavior potential across the district. We identified 145 hectares of parcels of district land that should be looked at for fuel mitigation treatments. These areas are ranked as high hazard, have high fire behavior potential and ignition potential, and the idea of fuel treatments is to reduce that fire behavior potential by removing some of the fuels. We also made 54 recommendations that have been vetted across district staff in the various departments that look at fuel management. We've looked at access and egress for evacuation. We've reviewed all of your policies and bylaws and have made recommendations around that. We've recommended a higher level of Fire Smart in the community, a higher level of education around Fire Smart in terms of the construction of new buildings, in terms of construction of significantly altered buildings, and the biggest one is around landscaping material that's used. We've made recommendations around communication and education, wildfire preparedness, and the fire services capabilities or their resource availability in fighting interface fires. Fuel management, the next stage would be to proceed with detailed assessment and prescriptions and start a treatment program around mitigating some of those hazardous fuels. As the chief said, I've been working with District of North Van since 2009, and we've completed the first round of treatments. Roughly 150 hectares that have been positively received in the community, and there's been virtually no backlash or no concern with what's been done there. We would recommend moving with the same program. We've got numerous trails that people are using during summer months. They are both an evacuation concern if you've got people out there and that area catches on fire. There's also they're available for evacuation as well. So we're looking at how do we get people out of there? Where is that material available? Can we put it in one place? Policy and bylaw, we've recommended that you review the OCP with fire in mind in terms of growth management and consideration of park acquisitions, whether they're a hazard at the time of acquisition, and whether the developer should actually do some mitigative work before the district assumes that. One of the things that's happened across British Columbia is many municipalities have acquired parks, recreation facilities that are a hazard, and then they've had to spend municipal dollars treating those areas when they should have probably been the development's responsibility. We've talked about updating legislation. There are obviously sometimes conflicts around existing things. We've highlighted the tree bylaw and the language around tree bylaw, and there is potential that some trees, not all trees, but some trees may represent a fire hazard, and we should be able to remove them within the context of the tree bylaw. Increase the implementation of Fire Smart principles. Ideally, new development should fall under a wildfire development permit area. Your staff is working on the creation of a development permit area where new buildings, new envelopes are built within some of these hazardous areas. They would have to meet standards of construction and landscaping to mitigate the risk of wildfire. We've also got an application moving forward, the district has an application moving forward, looking at applying for funding under the new program that the province is funding, the Community Resilience Initiative program. And we've recommended that you use some of those dollars to build a Fire Smart demonstration facility owned by the district. As well, there is already a green waste program on the North Shore. Ideally, we enhance that some more by providing chipping services, which can be funded through some of these grants, to help residents remove some of this debris, which at times can be really expensive on certain lots. So we've had a program in Whistler where that program's oversubscribed. I can tell you on Bowen Island, they did 5 Fire Smart workshops over the last 2 years. You had to sign up for the workshop, and then you had access to the chipping program. They were oversubscribed. So a lot of people want to do this work. They really value the support of the municipality in conducting some of that work. Obviously, more people need to understand the principles of Fire Smart. Many historic homes here have a lot of vegetation in close proximity to the home, a lot of flammable hedging, a lot of materials that can burn. So remember, we're not only trying to prevent a fire from coming into the community, we're trying to protect fire from leaving the community. Somebody has a barbecue fire, goes on the roof, catches on the hedging, it's in the forest, it's out of control, and these guys don't have a chance to deal with it. Ideally, we have to move to a more resilient vegetation around the home. So communication and education is a big part of this process. Making this publicly available on the website, developing a Fire Smart website page to support knowledge and education of people to better protect their homes is an important part. Obviously, we have a lot of critical infrastructure. We have pumping stations, water infrastructure, electrical infrastructure. Much of it is embedded in the forest, and one of the things that we've learned in some of these big wildfire events is these critical infrastructure elements are damaged by wildfire, and the emergency responders lose the capability to do what they need to do in terms of communication. Can you imagine a cell tower going down or electricity going down to an EOC? All of these things need to be reviewed and protected, and that's a priority of one of the recommendations within the plan. We've made recommendations around preparedness, working with NACIMO and the BC Wildfire Service, inventorying equipment and updating the location of some of that equipment. We've recommended that you purchase a Type 2 structural protection unit, which essentially is a sprinkler kit, which we can triage a series of residents that are threatened by one of these ember showers. These Type 2 structural protection kits are very effective because they basically produce a higher relative humidity around homes, so when those embers come into that relative humidity, they're extinguished. So they don't land on the roof and start the roof on fire. So you're really just changing the fire environment with these units. So in summary, the CWPP sets the stage for implementing a number of actions. There's 54 recommendations. I'm sure you've had a look at them. The district's already made a lot of progress since 2017 and 2018 in recognizing and trying to address some of the concerns that have been identified in the 2 small fires that you've had. There is outstanding collaboration with Metro Vancouver First Nations neighboring municipalities, and a number of other resources on the North Shore, and ideally that continues to successfully implement the plan. So I'll end it there, try to be quick, short, to the point, and you can ask all the questions you want. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Soprovich.
I was at a Metro Regional Park, asked the question, and I took your plan along and said, is Metro obligated to do a plan? And they said, no, each municipality would do their own through the fire departments. So in areas of regional parks, we don't have one in West Vancouver except the Capilano Regional Park. If it was to catch on, who is responsible for the absolute cost of that then? And,
Yeah, you can
and
go for that.
on top of that, is there a warranted action of every municipality doing a fire plan?
So I'll answer those two questions. First question on Metro Vancouver. Metro Vancouver has done a risk assessment, Lower Mainland wide, of all of their parks, and all of the hazardous areas have been identified and risks related to communities identified across every Metro park. I know because I did the work. Second question, in terms of fighting the fires, Metro Water Protection has a crew stationed at Seymour that's helicopter based, that's trained in fire suppression, and they work closely with the BC Wildfire Service, and if there was a Metro Park fire, they would respond to that fire along with whatever local municipality was affected. In terms of costs related to those fires, that is very complicated, but obviously Metro would play into that, province would play into that, and local municipalities would play into that.
Okay, so the second question to you, Mr. Blackwell, is in all your recommendations, there's no one single action that could give fire protection plan, protection plan. It's a well thought out but coordinated effort of so many particulars. How do you go through a process of 54 recommendations when the action is taking place? What's the priorities?
So I think what we've tried to do is rank the priorities from high to low and put a cost to those. Right. So in my experience, different municipalities have different resource capabilities, budgets, and staff to actually implement this. If you look at what's happened in the District of North Van, they have taken since 2009 to implement all 42 recommendations based on the resources that they had available to them. If we go to Whistler, for example, Whistler's gone through a phase of realizing that the urgency to do something is significant, and actually is now investing $1 million of capital money from the municipal budget into accelerating the plan because they weren't happy that they could get things done fast enough relying on government grants. So it really is at your disposal as a council to decide how much resources, whether you're going to fund this both externally and internally. I can tell you that if you're looking to do this externally, you're probably on a 20-year pathway. When relying on government grants, if the department isn't supported to move forward with some of its own actions.
So was there a thought process in, no, I guess that wasn't, like it depends on the West Van budget then, success of.
The speed with which you can action this will be dependent on both local government funding and provincial funding. There is a lot of provincial funding available right now. The district has applied to maximize that, and that program is available for the next 2 years. Yeah. But after that, there's no guarantee.
Ms. Lemus, have we applied certainly under this guideline for this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Soprovich. So this evening, we are looking for your approval to apply forward, to move that grant forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for that presentation. I was wondering if you could just speak briefly for the benefit of those members of the public who are concerned about tree debris, essentially when it comes to fuel management of, do the trees decompose fast enough such that if there's a forest fire, they won't be concerned, or, walk us through that, because there aren't a lot of fires here, obviously, and so I think there's people who are concerned that fallen trees just lay about and are potential risks.
I mean, it really depends on the characteristic of each individual parcel of forest. But what happens on the coast here, particularly in municipalities, is when you daylight the edge of a forest, you change the light environment. And that light environment becomes favorable for species like hemlock to regenerate. So we often get a lot of fuel building up in those daylighted edges of forest that typically are next to developments or typically in openings. So those are the areas that, and the other thing that you've probably seen over the 2017, 2018 summers, we went through probably the worst drought in 30 to 40 years on the coast. And that has created a significant amount of stress and mortality within the forest. Forests, unfortunately, we look at them as static entities. We put lines around them, we call them parks, and we don't manage them. And the reality is they're dynamic systems. They grow, they die, they change. And the coastal forests are on a much longer trajectory than the interior forests, but they still have changes that can create hazards that we need to address. Dead hazard trees, which you have a program for to protect people from falling trees. Wind throw, like you saw in Stanley Park in 2006. Those are dynamic events that change forest conditions that can make them hazardous. The same things apply when we're talking about fuel management and fire.
Thank you.
Good. So I do have a couple of speakers signed up on these items before we, but I guess we have no other questions for the presenters, so thank you very much. It's a very comprehensive report, and we look forward to seeing some of this in the budget then.
Yes, so we have asked for some stuff in the budget for this year, and then as the proposal is to have a report back to you in April 2020 of where we're moving with stuff.
Well, I think the community will feel very good about that, so thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll call up Michael Evison first, and then Lucinda Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. I'm very pleased to receive the report, the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. It's very comprehensive, as we've all read and seen on the screen. I've read all 54 strategic recommendations, and I've skipped read Brackwell's report. And maybe to give some people an idea of the thought and detail put into this plan, to start with, there are 33 commonly used acronyms. And then you start reading the report. I have a couple of concerns and suggestions, and I'll try and paraphrase what I might have said, but I don't think I need to now, having listened to Mr. Blackwell. But I'm concerned that the work plan being prepared by staff is not biased simply to gain provincial funding. And there's reference on page 4 of the staff report, which seems to allude or sway decisions in favor of funding opportunities. And I guess we all have to be reminded that there are a lot of areas of concern that are not necessarily going to be funded. I would like to see that the plan is more objective towards private lands versus Crown and municipal lands. The district's role must be beyond the role of an influencer. And again, there seems to be somewhat of a bias towards Crown and municipal lands. And thirdly, while preparing the work plan, staff are not shackled with the almighty dollar. If the plan is going to be prohibitively costly, then we have to find a solution, because the flip side would be a catastrophic fire, which would probably go and bankrupt the municipality. And finally, I find no clear reference to the importance of having residents' input during the preparation of the work plan. This, in my opinion, is a vital requirement and would suggest some kind of steering committee. Now, I must I would say that recommendation number 37 seems to allude to this need, but in my opinion, it's far from clear. And I would ask staff and council to take a good look at that. And perhaps in conclusion, this is a great start. It's an excellent report. And council and staff deserve credit for taking this much-needed first step. It took a little longer than I had hoped, but I'm not complaining. Now the heavy lifting begins, and I wish all of you the very best of luck in being able to put implementation to this wonderful plan.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Ms. Jones.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In contrast to the previous speaker, did not go through all 54 recommendations, but I found at the beginning most interesting the recommendation found in Section 5, Item 21, the importance of continually updating development permits to incorporate potential changes in zoning and the wildland-urban interface. In relation to the continued incursion of British Pacific properties above the highway, this specifically labeled area is changing significantly, potentially, wherein the highway used to be not only a visual demarcation, but an operational one too, in relation to the interface of the West Vancouver District with wildlife and with forest. So it is very important that we establish performance targets in relation to ecologically superior materials and design, such as mass timber to meet code compliance via alternate solutions in order to meet IPCC standards at a minimum. That is the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change Standards at a minimum, creating, I hope, a leading quality of ecologically sound construction of habitation. And certainly we cannot put the increase of density of housing above the forest. We need the forest as much as we need anything else, as much as we need our water, as much as we need our seascape and our streams to continue to give life to the salmon habitat that it has over generations provided to the North Shore. So some of these recommendations, of course, brings the discussion to construction if we're talking about continued development that is going to push against the interface of the forest. The examination and documentation of solutions meeting code compliance and IPCC standards, as mentioned above. We need to identify applicable objectives, functional intentions, and acceptable solutions. Identify any assumptions, limiting factors, testing procedures, engineering, or building performance parameters. Include qualifications, experience, and background of all designers who have anything to do with continuing development above the highway. I found in my references the Canadian Wood Council, great recommendations for the continued creation of habitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, don't see any more speakers on this matter, so I will ask for a motion. Councillor Gambioli.
Right, so I will recommend that I will recommend the motions as written.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Oh, I did have further discussion.
You didn't?
I did.
You did, okay.
I did.
Well,
I just had a couple of comments. I had written earlier to Chief Clark to ask about the question of there is a lot of jargon in here for those of us lay people. my concerns around what they call fuel treatment. And I'm assuming, as a layperson, that this, fuel treatment or fuel management actually means cutting down trees and removing vegetation. And I think that there are going to be some serious concerns around that in the community. I know you mentioned that in District of North Van, they've done some of that, and there hasn't been any pushback. So that's great. I'm just a bit concerned around our, climate emergency declaration, around our natural capital assets plan, and around the issue of our own tree bylaw that's going to be debated again at some point in the future. So I just think that the community might have some concerns in those areas. So I just want us to be careful, and I'm assuming that when some of this starts to happen, it's obviously going to be part of our budget. I guess we can rediscuss it if we want in the new year when the budget comes up, but I'm assuming that we'll be getting some sort of updates on this in the future, and Chief Clark is nodding, so okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you then. We'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously, and thank you very much for both your work on this. Item number 9 is the temporary protection of the Baker residents at 1143 Airmont Drive.
Madam Mayor and Council, just as a brief update and report on this, the district has received a demolition permit application to demolish the existing Baker residence at 1143 Airmont Drive. To date, no building permit has been received. My staff have attempted to contact the owners of the property on multiple occasions to set up a meeting to discuss possible alternative development opportunities in exchange for legal protection of the existing house. However, to date, there's been no response from the property owners. Staff wish to delay issuance of the demolition permit in order to allow more time to attempt to initiate discussion. This action requires an order from council and allows the district to withhold the issuance of a demolition permit or a building permit that would significantly alter the house for up to 60 days of the resolution. So staff are recommending that you essentially move the motions as written, please.
Okay. It's Councillor Lambert.
Madam Mayor, move the recommendation as written.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 9.1, proposed archives donation agreement and proposed District of West Vancouver Archives Reserve Fund bylaw number 5050-2019.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have some brief remarks. And just while Redo's settling in, it's my pleasure to introduce Redo Shan. Redo's the district's archivist, and he's responsible for managing and maintaining all the district's archival holdings, which are currently stored across the street at Gertrude Lawson House, and he's worked with the district for 5 years. And just to show you the diversity of things that Legislative Services has done, I don't think I've ever had cause to call Redo before council in the 5 years he's worked here, so thank you for coming, Redo. So Redo and I are thrilled to present this report for council's consideration. For context, Rupert Harrison served as municipal clerk for the District of West Vancouver from 1943 until 1979. Back in 1975, council passed a resolution to provide Rupert Harrison with time and resources to embark upon a program of research into the history of West Vancouver. His mandate included collecting historical records and information from pioneering residents. And after his retirement, he spent the next 20 years volunteering his time to establish what would become the West Vancouver Archives. And through his volunteerism, he laid the groundwork for the foundation of the West Vancouver Historical Society. So we're here today because Mr. Ken Harrison, Rupert Harrison's son, as well as Ken Harrison's wife, Ms. Leslie McLaughlin, have approached district staff and indicated their desire to make an annual donation that would be used to further the purpose and objectives of the archives in honor of Rupert Harrison's work. And this would include supporting the arrangement and description of assets held by the archives. Staff are requesting authorization to execute the donation agreement attached to the report as Appendix A and recommend that a separate fund be established to hold monies donated to the archives. Proposed District of West Vancouver Archives Fund bylaw number 5050-2019 is attached as Appendix B to the report for council's consideration accordingly. The reason why I kept Redo here, predominantly I'd like to thank him for all of his efforts in bringing about this donation and in liaising with Mr. Harrison and Mrs. McLaughlin. And of course, before closing, I do want to express my sincere appreciation to Mr. Harrison and Mrs. McLaughlin for approaching the district regarding this donation. The Archives does not have a large operational budget, and this annual donation will allow staff to move forward with digitizing and cataloging archival materials and in continuing the excellent work started by Rupert Harrison so many years ago. So on behalf of the district, the Legislative Services Division, and especially I think Credo, who will find good use for this additional funding, thank you so much to both of them for their generous donation. And over to you, Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of staff or Credo? We've met before. Nice to see you again. Councillor Gambioli and then Councillor Cameron.
So two questions, just while we're on the topic of archives and things like that. What do we have planned for the space for our archives? I know where you are right now is a humble place, and if we're getting more donations, we're going to need more space. So what kind of a plan do we have?
So, Madam Mayor, to my understanding, the Parks, Culture and Community Services Division are currently exploring different options for an art museum facility or some sort of other similar public facility. Our hope is that with regard to the archives, that we would be able to repatriate them back to Municipal Hall as part of the ongoing earthquake proofing and construction. Staff had cleared about 3,000 boxes worth of records from our basement areas. And our hope is that as part of the construction process, we can reconvert that area into a space more suitable for the storage of archival grade materials. And we will eventually be able to relocate the archives back to that space.
So we're bringing the archives home. Nice.
Optimistically, yes.
Repatriating the archives.
Repatriating the archives, okay. And my second question is more a financial question. I don't know if we have to bring anyone out from the back row there, but my question is, I know we've established different funds before. The Public Art Fund is an example, but in this case, did we consider putting the funding monies, for example, with the West Van Foundation rather than with us, so that they could potentially advertise for more funding for archival work?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Gambioli, we did actually discuss the option of going with the West Vancouver Foundation with Mr. Harrison. He was reluctant to do that for reasons of his own. And he felt more comfortable with the idea that there would be an archives fund here at the district. There are also, there's at least one other donation for archives that was received by the district, I believe more than 10 years ago, and has simply been held by the district outside of a fund. And our hope is that if we combine that with Mr. Harrison's donations and perhaps are able to attract other donations, that will go further to support the archives.
Thank you. Any other questions from council, comments? I have one speaker signed up, Carol Ann Reynolds, on this item.
So Caroline Reynolds, Chair of Heritage West Van, first councillor for Heritage, and Archives, of course, is right. And if you want my address for, said they didn't have the address, it's 2403 Marine Drive for West Van Matters and for Heritage West Van. This is very exciting. It's really a pleasure to see this. I have a few questions before I comment, if that would be all right. One is, how much is in the fund so far that you've had for 10 years?
Madam
Roughly,
Mayor,
I mean.
my understanding, and I'll defer to Director Gordon just to confirm, but my understanding is there was a donation that now totals approximately $85,000, and the intent of that donation back when it was made was to help explore a future home for the archives. So it's our hope that as part of this repatriation process, once the Municipal Hall construction is complete, some of those monies could be used to help bring the archives back here and make the space suitable for archival purposes.
Great. Mr. Harrison was just marvelous. I knew him too, and the service to this community is just incomparable. And the other thing, it said, I read the report, and it said there's an annual donation. I have two questions. How much is the annual donation? And secondly, can that be discontinued at any time, or is there a time limit on it?
Madam Mayor, through you to Ms. Reynolds, my understanding is that the annual donation would be for at least $5,000 based on my conversation with Mr. Harrison. We didn't set a firm amount, so we'll see what that gets to once we execute the agreement. And then, my apologies, Ms. Reynolds, I'll ask you to repeat your second question. I lost my train of thought there.
Can they cancel it at any time? I mean, can't be 5,000 for infinity.
I believe the intent of entering into the agreement is that the funding would continue in perpetuity, or for as long as the donor continued, but I'll defer to Director Gordon. I don't know all the details on that.
Your worship, through you to Ms. Reynolds, it is a donation, and so a donation is a voluntary contribution.
Right.
And so it is possible that at some point the donor may discontinue the donation. It's certainly not the intention of Mr. Harrison to do so. His intention is to carry on basically in perpetuity. But being as it is a donation, it's not the same as a contract agreement or anything like that. The agreement that we're asking council to endorse tonight basically just sets out the fact that there would be a relationship and that it would be his intention to provide this funds, and that the funds would be used to be put into this archive fund. So they would not be used for anything else. But we can't compel a person to provide a donation.
Thank you. And that also, of course, archives are connected with heritage, and this is not the time or place to discuss it, but obviously it could be, talk about whether it's to heritage as well, and I would certainly be willing to advocate donations from heritage to the archives, so however you want to work that out. I mean, it's something you have to work out. So that's really exciting, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, no more speakers on the speakers list. Can I get a motion from oh, yes. Ms. Bibbings.
I just really had a couple of questions.
Would you like to state your name for the record and whether you're West Van resident or not?
Certainly. Susan Bibbings, 5765 Cranley Drive, P7W1T1.
Thank you.
I was just curious, do the archives just go back to the founding of the municipality of West Vancouver, or historically do they, do they just represent the colonial era of our history, or do they go back before that colonial history?
Thank you. Maybe our archivist can answer that.
Madam Mayor, I'll defer that question to Mr. Shan.
Through Mayor and Council to Ms. Binnings. Technically, no, the archives are made up of corporate records from the district, which date back to the foundation of the district, which is 1912. We do also have records from various community members. So some of the families whose records we have, they have been in West Vancouver prior to the foundation of the district. So families like the Lawsons and the Thompsons, which maybe go back to the early 1900s. But generally, no, that's the extent of the holdings of the archives. They wouldn't include records much beyond the early 1900s.
Okay. Is there any plan to actually do a comprehensive history then? Because I'm very concerned about the erasure and the sterilization and the sanitation of the Indigenous genocide that happened where we're currently sitting, and all of that rather violent history which is not represented in our archives. Is there any plan to include that, or are we just going to keep the history from the founding of West Vancouver forward?
Through Mayor and Council to Ms. Binnings, I guess the role of the archives is to acquire and maintain records that have been created in the District of West Vancouver. We ourselves don't engage in historical scholarship. We merely maintain records that facilitate historical scholarship. Records can be put to any myriad of uses. Trying to anticipate what records will be used for is virtually impossible. So we don't go out to pursue certain lines of historical inquiry. We merely make those records available for those who wish to pursue any kind of history.
I see. Because, I mean, anyone can go online and see that, for example, at European Contact, there were 15,000 Tsleil-Waututh people living where we're living right now. And by the time that the biological warfare had been conducted to eliminate Indigenous peoples of that nation, we were down to 13 individuals by the year 1700. So I'm just really curious if there's any aim to educate people about the history of the stolen lands that we're sitting on.
So I don't know if our archivist can really answer that. It's outside his scope, but I think we're making great strides moving forward around reconciliation, around historical connections. I don't know if
I'm
anyone's
happy to hear that. Are there any plans to actually include any of the Salish Sea's voices here, where all these decisions are being made on their unceded ancestral stolen lands? Are there any plans to include those voices at this table?
We absolutely do reach out to them as much as we can, and they often engage with us, but they also have a fairly heavy load of work, so we have to be respectful of that as well.
I've just never seen any single voice of those nations present at any of these meetings. So I'm just be really, really great to talking about moving forward to have those voices included at this table.
Absolutely.
Do
And
you not-
I'm actually in regular contact with the members of, with one member of the Squamish Nation, a councillor. We meet every month to every 6 weeks regularly to have these sort of discussions, so I'm in very close contact with them. And
That's great to hear.
I'm chair of the Metro Indigenous Relations Committee as well, so following all of these issues on a region-wide basis as well.
I welcome the day when they can be at the table with us, involved in these conversations that we're having about these decisions.
Yes, I
Okay.
agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, the Squamish Nation has made a statement about climate change and bringing in their own attitude to the 2010 by 2021 to bring in line for all the emissions. So they've already started their own in climate change and other things. So I think in the future, through Madam Mayor, that we will connect somewhere and bring them in as the fourth municipality to be considering climate change and other things that you were referring to.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to hear that. We do need to evolve forward. It was only in our very recent history that Asians and Jewish people were not allowed to own property here. So it's very important that we're evolving and moving forward in a more inclusive and less racist manner.
Absolutely. No question. Thank you. All right. So I think that concludes that item. So we'll get a motion on the floor.
Madam Mayor, I'll move the motion as written.
The first motion.
Yep.
And all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And secondly, I'll move the second motion, setting up the fund as written.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And we move to consent agenda items. Councillor Thompson, thank you very much.
I'll recommend that the consent agenda items as follows be approved as written.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the reports from mayor and councillors. Oh, we got Councillor Wong. He beat you to it.
Bitch.
Oh, no, it doesn't look like he did, actually. What's going on?
Madam Mayor, when you just recognized him, I pressed his
Oh, okay,
mic to turn
Councillor
on.
Wong and then Councillor Soprovich.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Soprovich. Colleagues, I had an opportunity to attend a great workshop on Sunday. Two young people from our community who are Ismaili Muslim decided to hold a forum where people could discuss and ask those uncomfortable questions that they didn't have anywhere to ask, to help build relationship, build understanding, and build bridges between the Muslim and non-Muslim community. It's a fantastic opportunity to see our young people really engage in some of the difficult issues of our community, and also great to see the rest of the community come out and participate and engage in that. So I certainly hope that there will be more of that in the community, and I commend our two young individuals for all the work that they've done.
Thank you for attending on behalf of council. Councillor Soprovich.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, this publication for staff to look out Widgeon Marsh Regional Park on the shores of the Pitt River. Incredible wetlands for miles. It's a park that is going to be filled by tourists and relaxation in nature. We toured it in August, and let me tell you, it's the marshlands, the wetland, the ecosystem is just unbelievable there. It goes on for all the way down the river and towards the lake, and it's on both sides. So it's this Widgeon Park is on the north side, and there will be in low marsh areas walkways to provide for people to go out to close to the water's edge. We own a couple of houses there, and I was quite impressed. So the other is a publication from Stewardship News that a lot of volunteers are getting involved in areas like freshwater habitat studies in the different parks and the restoring important wetland habitat for amphibians. So they're always doing a lot of work in the area of wildlife. Sea Rise, or the Coastal Marine Group, Working Group, we are working along. There'll be an interim presentation to council, I think sometimes in the early new year, is it? Yeah, in January, so.
That'll be our first report, I think, from them.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Councillor Gambioli.
Well, I'm just going to report on one of my meetings, because this, I think, for the rest of council has the most interesting impact. So this was the Regional Planning Committee meeting that was a couple weeks ago at Metro. And one of the items was what they call the Metro Vancouver 2040, which is kind of like their official community plan for the whole region. But it was begun in 2011 and goes out to 2040. And so what they did was what they call a performance monitoring report. And so what they did was they looked back at the last 10 years of the strategy being put in place and what all the different municipalities are doing. And unfortunately, the data that they can gather doesn't quite align with 2011 to the present, so it's a little bit before 2011 up to 2016. But there were some interesting parts that came out of that report specifically related to West Vancouver. And one of the goals of that report is to create compact urban areas. So in other words, to put new development in the urban areas, the town centers where there's good transit, and not, spread it all out over, single-family home paradise, and use up other places when we should be, creating small, compact areas. So essentially, the bottom line is that during those years, there's a chart, and you can find it online, but I looked at the other four municipalities of similar size to West Vancouver. So now I'm talking about New Westminster, Port Moody, Port Coquitlam, and Maple Ridge. And those similar sized municipalities to us grew in terms of new development and compact urban areas by 8%, 17%, 11%, and 24%, respectively, and we grew by 0%. 0%. So the promise that we made in 2011, Councillor Soprovich was here, was, according to the regional growth strategy, that we would be pulling our weight, by growing, I think it was about 2%. And we have not even accomplished that. We promised to do the least of any municipality, I believe, out of the 21 municipalities, and we haven't even reached that. And that was as of 2016. So anyway, just wanted you to know that, and some of the mayors and councillors at the table did say that it is a real problem, and they said, and I will quote, "When some municipalities don't pull their weight, it puts the pressure on all the rest of the municipalities in the region." And I swear to God that some of them looked right at me. Okay? So anyway, I'm just telling you the facts on that one item. We are, in fact, not pulling our weight. The second fact that came out of that report that I found really interesting, and actually more disturbing than interesting, is that in that amount of time, when our population didn't grow at all, guess what did grow? The number of cars in our municipality without any percent of population growth grew by 2,000 registered vehicles. No new people, no new development, 2,000 new cars. So that is a fact, and that is really disturbing in my opinion, and that is a cultural community shift that we have got to get changed. That is really embarrassing in my opinion. So congestion around here is not caused by development, it's caused by people buying more cars. 2,000 more cars between 2006 and 2016. And finally, on the car and transit part of the study that they did was they were asking people around the region, what are your number one issues these days? And what is interesting is that the two issues that we know, which are affordable housing and congestion, those two issues came up. But when they broke it down into who was answering the questions, the reality is that people who take public transit are the ones who say that affordable housing is their number one concern. It's people who have cars that say that congestion is their number one concern. So it's very related to an equity model that is what they're also wanting to discuss. So it makes also an impact in terms of what the feedback is that we get at the council table and through our emails. I found that very enlightening as well. So those three things to think about from the metro level. We have to start, pulling our weight.
Thank you for sitting on that committee so diligently. All right. No other, I don't see any other. Councillor Cameron's going to make.
Briefly say what the Mayor's Council's up to recently is there's letters going out from the Mayor's Council and the chair and the board to the Prime Minister's office and the leaders of the main parties and just underscoring the need for a stable transit fund from the federal government going forward from year to year, and more specifically asking and pressing the case for transit funding from the federal government to fund the phase 3 of the mayor's plan, which includes, among other things, SkyTrain extension and the issue that's starting to emerge is one of the sort of more popular ones, I suppose, is electrification of the bus fleet. So we have a need for a pool of money to start more aggressively converting the TransLink's diesel buses to electric. Every year, TransLink has to buy new buses to replace ones that are reaching end of life, and the problem is buying new buses. A diesel bus today means you're locking in 15 years of emissions. So there's a real desire amongst the mayor, all of the mayors really, to move aggressively towards purchasing the electric buses, which unfortunately are more expensive up front, but are cheaper in the long run to run. So we need that funding from the federal government, and so that's really the push now, is to focus the efforts on infrastructure and transit funding, make sure they're in the throne speech. And then there was we had the last meeting of the year of the Zero Waste Committee, and there was a number of interesting items there, talking about the persistence of plastics even in compost. And every meeting of that committee, plastics come up in one way or the other, and the relatively low diversion rate we have. I think 40% of plastics aren't even recycled, or just used one time. So we see around the region, municipalities, Vancouver's initiatives are coming into force next year, I believe, and the province is doing this consultation process on banning single-use items or restricting them. And so Metro and the Zero Waste Committee made detailed submissions to the province on that about what we'd like to see. And basically it's twofold. We'd like to see a lot of things banned at the provincial level, and then we'd like to see municipalities given the power to regulate any items that aren't banned, so they can tailor that. So I'll just leave it there.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, we've got, okay, can I get a motion to receive the reports?
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. And public questions and comments. We've got Ms. Reynolds as well as Ms. Jones.
Thank you very much. Is that on? Thank you very much. I was writing little notes here and I'm having trouble reading them. So this will not be all that coherent, and it won't be in the matter of importance. It'll be there. First of all, yes, I saw Councillor Wong on television with the two Lalji boys. That was very well done. If the population is decreasing, interested in climate change, we have fewer people, it'll be better for our climate. On the other hand, if we get more cars, I guess we need more public transport. I wasn't quite clear on two things about the beginning. It said additions to item 4, but then it sounded like it was a completely new item. So I can find out what that is because I want to write it in my report. You don't need to tell me now. But it was all about changing the thing. So it wasn't written here anyway, and I could probably get it from the clerk afterwards, so you don't need to answer it now. The other thing is I didn't quite understand about the minutes, because at the meeting, the mayor said November 10th, and that's the reason I spoke at PQP about that. I wouldn't have otherwise, yet the minutes don't say that. Now, I didn't understand what you were doing when you were accepting it, whether you were saying that the clerk would fix the minutes and they would be approved as fixed, or if they're going to be left incorrect. I wasn't quite clear on that, I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, my understanding was that council passed the resolution to adopt the minutes as written, and the rationale for that was it was better for the historical record to reflect the correct date rather than the mayor's misspeaking.
Well, I respectfully, disagree with that. I mean, there's nothing wrong. We all make mistakes. I mean, I make many of them, so that's not a big deal. But I am more concerned that the minutes be accurate, and which goes to then, that was absolutely great that you made your apology at the beginning of the meeting, Mayor Booth, especially since I commented at the end about how you addressed Councillor Wong. So I'm glad that that was taken to heart and that you changed it. But I would think two things, is that what I said should actually be registered instead of make comments were made. And what I wasn't quite sure. I was commenting when you said something. I went to say what you said, in fact, and my mic was cut off. And so I think, for me, I don't care. I will write something about it for the record. But I would like to know, I had not reached 3 minutes, and I would like to know so that other people who come up and speak, would know, because that was further about the right date for the Sunday and the thing about the comment. So
Thank you.
could that be made clear for how that's done in future, so
Yes.
that we all know?
Thank you.
And how will we see the motion, there was an item at 4, it says addition, but it was a completely different item when you were discussing it. How do we get that information?
Maybe you could speak to the clerk afterwards, Ms. Reynolds? She'd
Great.
be happy
Thank you
to.
very much. I'd like it for
Thank
the record.
Yeah,
Thank you.
All right, and Ms. Jones?
I have a question as to how the public hearing meeting on the 3rd of December now is to be conducted, because I actually haven't attended maybe that many public hearings and meetings, and I'm just hoping that it can be considered that the citizenry can contribute significantly to that. I know it is, at this moment in time, an exceptional circumstance at this significant juncture in the potential continued development of the upper lands by BPP. I see an imperative need for education and engagement of the democratic process. I believe the following people are required: of course, Mayor, Council, staff from Parks, Environment, Planning, and Engineering departments. Of course, I expect that Jeff Kroll and others from British Pacific Properties will be in attendance, including representatives of the Guinness family, and that particular effort be made to notify of this public hearing the Coast Salish First Nations and citizens from working groups involved with heritage stewarding, preserving ecology, and all those district departments mentioned above. I hope that all are considered welcome. There is a really significant film that I have come across, a TED Talks film, which I would like to send a link to you all and have that considered as a significant part of the public hearing. That would be a contribution from the citizenry rather than us just having, a 5-minute soundbite is another 2/3 again or something from a 3-minute, so that's nice. But I think in order to really feel like we are participating in this significant development, I'll send you the link to this film and see about having that as a contribution from the citizenry. Because so many meetings are held in Camara, which is, as we all know, not just a noun of a private vaulted room, but a verb, and that it is the attendees within that room who play a deliberate, private, and lobbying role. And so it is hard as citizens to feel excluded from some of the juicy information that goes between the district and corporations when it's deemed to include the acquisition or disposition or expropriation of land or improvements. I mean, the tone that is set as to why that is a private meeting is a little unsettling to those who are on the outside wanting to participate more. So
maybe Ms. Jones, Mr. Panettiere can provide you with some information about the public hearing process,
Okay.
as well as the closed meeting process, which is by legislation. the
Fantastic.
in-camera. Thank you. Thank you.
Now live? No.
After the meeting?
I'm happy to meet with you as soon as the
Oh,
meeting's over,
okay.
Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reynolds?
Sorry, I just wanted to, there was one correction that I wanted to make that I'm sorry I missed and all of that. Someone stated tonight that the Asians and Jews were not allowed in West Vancouver at some point. That is absolutely not true. But there was an area, Pacific Properties, where their covenant, where they did. That area, that developer, and that owner did that. West Vancouver never did that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so can I get a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone.